Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 98 of the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at Cosmic Eye Brewing. Make sure to check them out on social media at cosmiceye.beer. Check out some of their newer releases, including the collaboration with the band Spotlights. If you live in the Lincoln, Nebraska area, swing on by the tasting room. Wear a metal shirt on Mondays. It's a secret. Wear a metal shirt on Mondays and you'll get $1 off of a full pour. And while you're there, you can pick up some of their cans and take it home or ship it to some of your friends all over the United States. Spread the word. It's a family-owned, independent brewery, and we need more of that. In this episode, I talked to Alex Estrada of the band Silver Snakes. I caught him in the middle of their tour with Combichrist to talk a little bit about their new album, Death and the Moon, which comes out May 3rd on Claudio Sanchez's label, Evil Inc. Records. We talk a little bit about the new direction that the music has taken and leaning towards more of the industrial electronic side of things. We talk about all the influences that he had growing up in that world. We also talk about his family and his father, who was a very famous mariachi trumpet player and producer. We talk about Alex's studio back in Los Angeles, where he produces other bands and what that's like. We talk a little bit about food and much, much more. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please don't forget to check them out on social media. Go to yearofthesnakes.com and pre-order the new record. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Cheers. Everyone, and welcome to another episode of the RRBG podcast. I'm here with Alex Estrada of Silver Snakes. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. You're getting ready to release a new album, I see, the Death and the Moon, on May 3rd?
Yes, we are. Yep, this week.
That's exciting. How's it been going? I know you got the press cycle and all of that going, so has it been good?
Yeah, you know, it's refreshing to be diving into it because this record's been done for a long time, at least on our end, and just being able to jump in there and finally start showcasing all this stuff we've been working on has been really cool. There's so many hoops to jump through when you're putting out a new album, so just like any other release, it's a big waiting game. So
for sure.
We're really, really eager to get these songs out there, so.
Yeah, and this is on Evil Inc. Records. I know you used to be on Pelagic Records. How's that been? Switching over to Evil Inc.? That's Claudio Sanchez's label, right?
Yeah, actually, we were with them as well for the last cycle. For the last tour, we did a co-release between Evil Inc. and Pelagic. So, I mean, that was awesome because the Pelagic dudes from that band, The Ocean, are good friends of ours. You know, we toured with them a few years ago. So that was a really cool experience doing the co-release, and then that was just kind of like a one-off, and it was cool because, you know, they're really into focusing on vinyl and doing all those variants.
Yeah.
So for this release, we're just focusing itself on, you know, on the record, on the songs, and just pushing that out there as much as we can.
Very cool. Yeah, I had Robin on the show a while back. That they're great people, and they're putting out some of the best vinyl I've seen. Like that box set that they released for The Ocean with like fossils in it.
Gorgeous.
I was like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, it's insane. So I personally don't have any of the vinyl variants from our last record that was released through them, and I would love to finally pick them up. I'm probably just going to have to order them on their website or something.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. Like you get, I don't know if you get this a lot, but there's, friends will hit you up like, hey man, can you send me a vinyl? And it's like, dude, I don't even have it.
Oh yeah, because that's all the time. Unless the label is like a really big focused vinyl label itself, then vinyl itself, we all know it's a scarcity. It is coming back, but I mean the plants and everything relating to it. I mean that's the allure of vinyl, though. So
for sure,
it's to be expected.
Yeah, and it's not expensive. I mean, I'm sorry, it's expensive, so it's not easy to just be handing these out to everybody. They don't realize that.
Yeah, definitely. So, I hope people still appreciate everything that goes into releasing music on vinyl, because it's by no means is it as easy as just getting your stuff out there as a digital release.
For sure. I mean, I know I just saw an article the other day that Bandcamp is starting to get in the game of vinyl. I like kind of like on demand vinyl. I'm like, I don't even know how you guys are pulling that one off, but okay.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know if there's like limitations to it, like whether or not you need to have a certain amount of pre-orders or something like that. But yeah, they're getting in the game of vinyl, so it's exciting to see a little support for the bands that just aren't getting that record label support like they used to back in the day.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. And you're on the road right now with Combi Christ. How's that been going for you?
It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's very different. All the tours we've ever done have been different. We've never kind of, the same way with our records and just stylistically with the band, we've never really stuck to one thing, Yeah. And it's kind of cliche to say, we're always evolving, we're always trying to do this, but I wouldn't say evolving, more as though it's just as a musician, as a performer, like, why wouldn't we want to push ourselves and do different things and get out of our, our comfort zone? So with this album cycle, this new record, Death of the Moon, being more electronic focused, it's not a full-on electronic album, but the focus is definitely there, whereas in the past it was more straightforward and rock-driven. Getting the chance to tour with a band like Combi Christ, who's really been around that scene for a long time, albeit more on like the crossover, like metal tinge of it, it's been great. It's been cool. We're playing to people that have never seen our band before. We're playing to people that have never heard of our band before. So it's a really cool experience. And then at the end of the day, we're coming from a place of that 90s crossover between like alternative and, back when it wasn't a thing, when you didn't have to say, oh, this was like electronic inspired, this was industrial inspired. No one asked. If you were like a quote unquote alternative rock band, you just did whatever you wanted. And people were just like, cool, that's the band, It wasn't as label focused as it is these days. So I feel like being on a tour like this, we're dabbing a bit more into that crowd, since it is a bit of an older crowd.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been cool. Unexpected and really cool. And the band itself, Combi Christ, they're some of the nicest guys we've ever toured with. So it's been a real nice experience overall.
That's great, man. And I mean, the crowd has been reacting positively because, like you said, this album is kind of a new territory for you in that sense. And, maybe the fan base isn't as familiar with you guys because they're just strictly into like an industrial electronic sound and maybe had never heard your previous records. So is the crowd kind of receptive? Are they good about it?
They are, because I think that, with a lot of things and a lot of different genres, there's like a dividing line. There's like a split where you discover the music that a lot of people around you are listening to, and then you either dive further in one way or dive further in the other way. And I feel like the type of music that we're playing is tapping into what Combi Christ fans were really into before they took that harder dive towards the, like gas mask territory, you know what I mean? Like that real deep industrial side of things.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool to see people that are showing up to these shows that are deep in it, you know what I mean? Deeper than I know about. Like, I won't pretend that it's something that I know much about, but I do enjoy the music. But it's cool. It's funny to see the kind of compliments we get because they stay pretty mainstream, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very, you guys reminded me of the Deftones. You guys remind me of Nine Inch Nails and a lot of those bands that like we all know. And that's what I like. I like that it's tapping into that sort of familiarity with these people. And it's been really cool. They've been really receptive. The crowds have been really cool, meeting a lot of cool new people. And it's a nice change of pace for us because we haven't toured for about a year and a half since we've been working on the record. And to dive into a situation like this where everyone is so friendly and receptive, we couldn't ask for anything better.
That's great, man. Yeah, even Combi Christ has changed their sound a bit because I know that I used to listen to them back in the day, and it was way more industrial, way more electronic, and now they're kind of incorporating more guitars and more of a metal sound to it, which is good, you know.
Definitely. And they're playing a lot of those old songs on this tour, so it's bringing out a lot of their old fans.
Nice.
But I think the fact that they kind of did that crossover, you know, they're bringing in those other elements is one of the reasons why it's not so strange to see a band like us on stage right before them every night. You know what I mean? They
Sure,
have,
yeah.
we're at the end of the day, we're still a guitar-driven band, no matter what those guitars are over. But Combi Christ adding a lot more of those elements and traditional rock elements to things, and Andy's vocals, you know, they go from aggressive to melodic, and it's a cool fit.
Yeah, yeah. And for you guys, like, I'm curious because I had this problem when I was in a band. We used to kind of go all over the place with each different, like each song was a different kind of genre. Like one would be punk, the other one would be a little bit more hardcore, and then we'd go into like rock ballad territory, and it always kind of split our fans, like our fan base, like at the show itself. Like we'll have everybody rush to the front and mosh, and then like we'll do the ballad or something, and then it would kind of open up, and another crowd would move in, and it's it was interesting to see. But I'm wondering how your fan base is kind of reacting to the drastic shift in sound for you guys.
Well, that's the thing. I'll be honest. We've been out of the game for a while, so a lot of our regular fan base that we have in a lot of these given towns, I don't want to say they forgot about us as much as they kind of forgot to look out for us. So the fact that we're coming to these towns, we're playing to all new crowds, and it's when we leave that we hear from people like, "I had no idea you guys were here." Like, damn. So we knew that was going to happen with the way we dropped off the map for a while, and now we're coming back. We want to stay busy this year. So we're hoping this is the tour that, gets our foot in the door with this different crowd, to put it one way. And more than anything, it's a big lesson in how to perform this style of music on stage on a tour. It's a long tour. We're out for 8 weeks, and it's an 8-week crash course in how to play this type of electronic rock music live, because it's something we've never done before. And every night it's been a learning experience, and we're hitting a few speed bumps, and we're having to adapt on the fly. But more than anything, it's really working, because I think we still get on stage with that energy from just a straightforward rock band, who our roots are not just in rock. I used to sing in like a crusty punk band, and the guys were in other heavy bands, and we come from that. So that aggression, that intensity, that like hypnotic quality is something that we're going to try to carry over to no matter what kind of crowd we're in front of, no matter what kind of tour we're on, and no matter what kind of release we're promoting.
Hell yeah, man. And yeah, people don't realize how complicated it can be when you're doing more electronics. Just, one simple update on a program, on a laptop or something like that can just ruin the whole thing, because, you have programming and shit to worry about. So yeah, it's way more intense when it comes to the technical side of things.
Yeah, and we're not, we don't want to dive. We don't want to dive straight into that, to the realm of just playing off a computer. We're not. We're actually not playing with a laptop on stage.
Oh, okay.
So we're running some tracks that we have to out of necessity that coincide with what we're playing live, but we're playing them all through hardware. So we're doing it through drum pads. Like there's never a point where it's just like, well, that drum beat's electronic, so our drummer's not going to do anything. He's playing everything, whether it's on sample pads or real drums. If there's extra sounds, I'm playing them on the synth. There's a bass synth for when the bass isn't playing. We didn't want to just be standing there pressing play every night. You know what I mean?
No, I appreciate that so much, man. Even for bands that are in the industrial realm, like, I went and saw V&V Nations, and I just really appreciated that there were dudes on stage with sample pads and playing like drum pads, because it just adds a whole new element to the live experience. Another electronic band like that was The Prodigy, which, rest in peace, Flint, but they would always have a drum set on stage and a guitar player. Like,
exactly.
That just adds so much more element to it. And you guys, specifically your performance, I saw you guys at the Regent with Let Live and Night Versus, I think, or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
that one was at the El Rey, I think.
At the El Rey, okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And I was blown away, because I hadn't really heard you guys all the way through, and I was like, man, what a great performance that was. And then I look online, I see like that, your sound changes per album. And then even when I heard the new song, I'm like, wow, this is radically different. And reminded me of the stuff that I listened to growing up too. Like you mentioned, Nine Inch Nails, Stabbing Westward was one that hit my brain. I'm like, wow, this that weird electronic rock sound from back
That's
then.
when we're getting a lot more these days. It's really funny, especially in the last week, almost every night at these shows, whether it's a front of house guy or someone, they're just like, you guys really remind me of Stabbing Westward. And I'm like, I just missed the mark with that band when I was younger. So like, I do remember them. I remember their big single, like I remember Save Yourself and all those big singles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember them from some soundtracks and stuff. But now that I go back and listen to it, I'm like, exactly. Like, this is the era when I started developing as a songwriter. So it only makes sense to me that songs I would write now, even though it's 2019, it's 20 years later from when some of that stuff was happening, that it still has tinges of that electronic rock. And, my all-time favorite bands like Garbage. Garbage is a massive influence on Silver Snakes.
Nice.
And that's a band that I don't see referenced very much in modern music, to be honest, aside from, of course, not to take away anything from this, but more than just Shirley Manson, who is a massive vocal influence on me, I just see her referenced as, like a female singer that rocks, and she does.
Yeah.
And she also fronts an incredible band that needs to be respected as a band as a whole. So the fact that she stands up there every night with a really cool message, her voice is incredible, her melodies are incredible, not just the fact that she's a woman on stage, the fact that she's an incredible musician is something that has influenced us more than anything. So that band, I feel like, had a huge touch on our new album. And of course, like, there's Nine Inch Nails, and I love Marilyn Manson, like late 90s Mechanical Animals. Marilyn Manson is like massive influence. And then, yeah, all that other stuff. And it kind of adds up. And that's what leads to us creating new things from album to album, because you don't always just sit there listening to the same stuff. I could go back, listen to our last record, Saboteur, and easily tell you what I was listening to while I was writing that. I was listening to nothing but like Cult of Luna and like Woven Hand and Ohm and a lot of stonery stuff and metallic stuff. And, I go through cycles like any other human being that is a fan of music, and that influences where I am with writing. But it's cool to see those styles from record to record start to clash in my own head. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah, when it comes to writing a song, I'll have a riff by a band like Ohm or Windhand in my head as much as I have a riff from a band like Frontline Assembly or VMV Nation or Imperative Reaction. And hearing that clash between two polar opposites on the spectrum of aggressive music, which is something very raw and on that stoner, slow, hypnotic realm, and then something very mechanical and industrial. It's been really cool to see how we could combine those things to maintain, our roots and to create something new.
Hell yeah, man. And I love it. Because that's how it is. Like you said, people go through cycles listening to music. And, a lot of people expect certain bands to just stick to one genre. Like if you're a punk band, that's it. Don't throw any kind of, proggy elements in there or anything, because it kind of throws it off. And it's like, no, man, you got to move around. Like, you listen to my buddies in Poison the Well. When they came out, it was straight up hardcore punk, and then they started, you get slide guitar in there and other things, and people start like, oh no, they're changing. It's like, yeah, good.
Good, yeah. Why wouldn't they? And that's why I say when you go back to like the 90s and the times where I was listening to music a lot, 7th and 8th grade, I feel like really shaped my favorites, to say the least, you know what I mean? Mm. And I was listening to Silverchair, Nine Inch Nails, the Smashing Pumpkins, was my all-time favorite band. And when bands like that were doing things, it's like, they caught flack for it. When the Smashing Pumpkins came out with Adore, people are like, this is soft. You know what I mean? That's all they said. This is soft. It doesn't rock as hard as the last album. But even an album like Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, 1979 is a drum machine with a vocal. Like, Where Boys Fear to Tread is like the heaviest guitar riff ever written. You know what I mean? Like, it's all over the place, and no one said a word about it. It was just a band making music. And I would love, it might be far-fetched to think this way, but I would love for it to get back to it like that, where it's not, Silver Snakes did a new electronic record. Silver Snakes did another melodic rock record. Just like Silver Snakes made a record. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that would be really cool for us, because that's where I am with it in my head. I'm not trying to write anything specifically, like, stylistically. It's just what comes out.
Yeah. No, I one would hope that people would be like that. But we'll see. It just feels like these days everybody wants to pick a side of something. So it's just, it's weird. Hopefully that all changes soon.
It's actually funny the way that works, though, because you would expect that more from a mainstream standpoint, from a if you come out of like punk and hardcore, you think, oh, the status quo, the mainstream, all that, like they're so judgmental, they need to do everything. But we've experienced so much more of that, like that need to put a label on everything from our roots, you know, coming from the punk side of things or the hardcore side of things. That's where, if we're on a tour like that, that's where it's like, oh, are you guys prog or metal? Are you guys electronic or rock? What is it? Yeah. Whereas when we've done, you know, we went out and did an arena tour with Korn, and we did a U.S. tour with Chevelle and all these more, you know, successful mainstream rock bands, and their fans, like, all it was horns in the air and like, yeah, you guys rock. Like, I'm going to buy a record. There wasn't any like, so I heard a touch of Neurosis in there mixed with this keyboard line. Would you say that's an influence? It was like, no, dude, you guys rock. I love the guitars. I love the vocals. Cool. I want to buy it.
Nice.
Which was, you know, you don't really expect that when you're kind of conditioned from a different place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, right? Like, I grew up in that same, like, you know, I would say elitist kind of mentality for metal people and hardcore people, and yeah, like they always hate on like the mainstream people. Like, you're listening to Korn, they suck. It's like, dude, then why are they selling millions of records?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Which, you know, which also makes an argument for stuff like Nickelback. So I won't fully agree with it. But
yeah, well, that's true.
But at the same time, I know what you're saying. But then at the same time, I remember those people that were like, that band sucks, that band's goofy, that band stinks. And now you come forward 20 years later, and it's just like, oh, are you guys gonna go to, you know, Korn night at the Regent? Like, now all of a sudden they're coming full circle with it, and it's just like, I'm a bigger Korn fan now than I was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it didn't interest me, you know, honestly. And I thought it was cool. I liked a couple of the songs I heard on the radio, but it just wasn't my thing. And then after touring with them, I'm like, holy crap, like, these songs are awesome. And these guys are awesome. And, like, this is cool and creative. And I see why there's longevity in their career. And I feel like an ass for being a kid who would kind of go out of my way to be like, oh, I'm not into that. You know, why? Like, who did that serve aside from myself just trying to feel better than everyone else for, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
a semester.
Like, I'm sure I did that too, but I definitely had friends that were way more like that. Like, I had a buddy of mine, like, I showed him an album, and he was like, that's garbage. And then months later, he comes to me, he's like, yo, have you heard this album? I'm like, yeah, dude, I showed it to you.
Yeah, totally. And of course, like, I feel like we were all like that. And
yeah.
I was, my thing, oh man, was when all my friends got into like Christian hardcore, metalcore and stuff like that. That was just like, okay, I got to draw the line. Like, I don't like any of this at all. Like, why is this a thing? Why does this exist? I felt real Hank Hill about it, you know? And then I was just like, okay, let me forget about everything that's happening lyrically right now, and just like, wow, some of this music is cool. And just, you know, there's no real point to just hating on music just because it's all your friends like it or everyone else likes it. If it's good, it's good.
For sure. And
I love Cardi B. Like, it's fine.
That's true. I mean, I don't even think I've ever heard one of her songs, in, like, not because of hate or anything. Just, I don't think I've ever sat down to hear a song, but I see her everywhere, and it's always so fascinating to me when people are like that, where you're like, I know who Cardi B is. I know she does this weird sound where she sounds like a bird, but like, I've never heard a song. But it's kind of
like that. It's like with TV, like, if you've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones and everyone around you's talking about it, your default after a while is going to be like, I hate it. I don't want to know what this is. Like, this is so annoying. But like, that one time happens where the radio's on and I hear like one of her songs and I'm like, this is sick. Like, this, of course, I'm like, coming from a place is like, I produce music for a living back at home in my studio. Mm-hmm. So to me, I'm just like, this is produced so well. Like, these hooks are so cool. And she has like the attitude to present this. Like, I totally appreciate it for what it is. And like, I'm not shy about saying that. We played the Fete Music Hall in Providence, Rhode Island the other night. And right after our show, you know, right after Combi Christ did their encore and like all the goths are buying their merch and everything, they start playing like Cardi B in the venue. And I'm just like one of two people in that room that are just, I know every word. I'm just like, so good. Like, why are these people, you were just dancing for 2 hours to a rock band. Like, you can like dance hard to this too. It's fine.
Yeah,
but
man. I think
that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that has to do a lot with your upbringing, because you know you grew up in a household of music and different kinds of music. Your father was mariachi, and you know your mom was a dancer, folklorica, right? If I remember right. Am I saying that?
She was. Yeah.
And you know you grew up around different music, like myself. Like, I'm Cuban, and I grew up in a household where my dad was listening to Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and the Bee Gees, and then my mother was blasting like Diana Ross and the Boney M's and all that. So I grew up around just all kinds of different music. So I can I hear, Katy Perry. My friends were all hating on it, and I was listening to Dark Horse from Katy Perry. I'm like, dude, it's awesome. I'm sorry, it's a good song.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but I wanted to say, I feel like you guys are releasing this album kind of at the perfect time with the industrial electronic sound, because there seems to be a kind of a growing interest in that. Like, you look around, you got bands like Three Teeth that are kind of releasing music in that world. Combi Christ is kind of active again. Like, they're on tour, they're releasing new music. Have you noticed that there's kind of been an increase in that attention for that genre?
Definitely. And it's cool to see it happening finally in LA a bit, because LA, being a band from Los Angeles, you feel like you're in a desert for music, and people outside LA think it's just like the hub for everything. Like, the LA music scene must be awesome. My band's going to move to LA and we're going to try to make it. And when bands from other cities hit us up and just like, hey, where's the spot to play? It's like, there's not anywhere to play. Like, that's not how it works in LA. There's not a tight-knit scene of music in LA. There just isn't. It doesn't exist. And it's really depressing, and it's a bit disheartening being a band from LA and being able, I can honestly say that we don't have a big following in LA. And I won't shy away from that, and I won't pretend like we do and say that we can sell out a show in LA, because we can't. We haven't spent a lot of time cutting our teeth in LA because there's nowhere to do it, and there's no real scene for it to happen, especially when you're a band that's trying to do different things from album to album. So anytime we play LA, it's if we're, opening on a tour or something, and we have, a group of people that'll come to see us, and the group that has kept up with us, which is really cool. But now seeing this sort of revival in the world of electronic music, and bands like Three Teeth, and then bands not from LA that come by and have these massive turnouts. Boy Harsher is like a band I really like right now, and they're just killing it. They're growing so fast. Drab Majesty is from LA. They're doing big things right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's been really cool. The Soft Moon is another one. That's a great example, because that is a band that has a lot of like post-punk influence on their sound, I would say, but they're performing like a rock band the way that we try to perform. So when I go to see them, and it's at, a small venue, and then the next time they come by, which is 3 months later, it's at a much bigger venue and they're selling it out, it's like, finally, this is happening, and with electronic music, there's a few things in LA. You got Das Bunker and The Lash and, Jewel Catch One and all that stuff, where they try to make these shows happen. And like any other scene, it's kind of hard to get your foot in the door with it and to be like, hey, I know if you look at our tour history, we've done some weird stuff, but like, this is where we're at now. Like, give us a chance. But this Combi Christ show we're doing, I think, is being put on by Das Bunker, which to me is amazing, because that's been a household name for so long in music that I love from LA. Like, that's where all the great bands played, and that was the promoter that gave them all the opportunity, that really got their foot in the door with Los Angeles fans of electronic and like proto-industrial music. So it's really cool to be playing the Regent with Combi Christ, have it be like a Das Bunker night, and to just go out there and in front of who knows how many people that have never seen us play before, and just be like, hey, we're right under your nose. This is the kind of music we make. We like the same stuff as you, and we hope they enjoy it.
That's exciting, man. That is really exciting, because I've definitely heard Das Bunker around, and they would do a lot of shows at the Union. I've only been living here for a couple years, but I feel like LA, I should have been here a long time ago, because even growing up in Miami, like, there is nothing. Like, it might be bad out here, and I know it is, because I've seen it and been around bands, and it, not only just the scene being kind of split up like that, but also just getting people out of the house in LA is hard. People don't want to cross the other side of the river and all this shit. So, but Miami was like desolate. It was just all dance music, reggaeton, and we had like one metal night at one really shitty bar, Churchill's. Which, it's a shitty bar, but it was our shitty bar, kind of like in New York with CBGBs and stuff, But yeah, I can definitely see, and like you were saying, that just seems to be a growth with Das Bunker and even bands like Black Queen. I think they're from LA. I mean, I know Greg's from LA.
Totally.
Yeah,
and I've known Greg for a long time as well. One of the first tours I ever did was with Dillinger back in 2008. Nice. And Greg and Steve, the guitarist, and then Telefon Tel Aviv, Justin, who does all the other stuff in the band, writes a lot of this stuff. It's incredible. And that's another thing. It's like seeing these guys that I've known for a while do something totally new. And we might not talk as much as we used to or whatever, but man, I saw them play Union on like New Year's Eve or something like 2 years ago when they first started, and there was such an awesome crowd for it. And of course, they're going to carry some over from the Dillinger fan base, but seeing that carry over, and then having Telefon Tel Aviv and my friend Vogel played that show as well, seeing that mix of people, that blend, that was kind of like that inclination that there was going to be this slight shift in that music scene in LA. And I have to thank them, bands like the Black Queen and again Drab Majesty, bands like that are just coming out doing their own thing unapologetically, and people are appreciating it and they're noticing it, and it's really cool.
Yeah, man. I was at that show. That was awesome. At the Union, the Black Queen show.
Yeah,
it was a great show.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I was laughing. I was just sitting in off to the side, like laughing at the dudes wearing Dillinger shirts. And I'm like, that's fun, but why are you wearing that shirt here?
Yeah. I mean, but at least I will say it looked like they all enjoyed it. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the crowd was definitely into it. So, yeah. And I wanted to go back. I mentioned your family. Did they give you any shit when you were growing up and you decided to not go and follow in the footsteps of your father and your grandfather before you, like mariachi music? Were they like, why are you doing that kind of, heavy, like, because for me, when I would listen to metal music and stuff like that, my mom would be like, oh, eso es satánico.
I mean, luckily I didn't have that, which is surprising. My mom's a religious woman, and I never once had her tell me that there was something I couldn't listen to. Of course, there were things that she frowned upon, and when I was young, it was, she didn't want to see any sort of like Marilyn Manson T-shirts on me or whatever. But she never regulated what I listened to on the radio, what CDs I had, which I really appreciate, because I think we all know that that's just a crock when they say that the music is what shapes you as a person. It's not. No. It's that doesn't shape you to do bad things. And that is something that's kind of force-fed down parents' throats. And it's a generational thing. And you had that whole era of Nancy Reagan and all that, just with the parental advisory stuff, or is that like Tipper Gore, and then just labeling everything and being like, if you listen to this, your kid's going to do bad things. Your children are going to go out and commit crimes. And obviously coming up in high school around the time when Columbine happened and all of that, everyone was aware of it. And they try to demonize a lot of musicians because of it, but I feel like they were well-spoken in their reaction to that. I'll never forget that Marilyn Manson interview after Columbine, where they said if you could say anything to the boys that committed that, those atrocities, like, what would you say? And he said, I wouldn't say anything, I'd listen. And it was like, cool, finally, like, someone gets it. And getting back on track with, like, the family thing, so obviously they have that in the limelight. That's where their focus is when they turn on the news, but they were just happy I did music. My dad is I'm, I believe, the 6th generation musician in the family. There's one more. There's a 7th already.
Wow. Okay.
And they're all mariachis, and they're deep roots. It's a deep-rooted family that has a lot of, accolades behind the name, and I'm very, very proud, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And I do feel there's a bit of guilt on my conscience that I'm not doing it, and I'm not carrying that on. But I am glad that I am doing music and I stay involved with it. And I've never turned my back. I've never pretended to not be interested in mariachi music or any of that, because I love it. If I'm on a metal tour for 2 months, or if I'm on this sort of like industrial electronic tour for 2 months, all I'm listening to in my headphones when I'm not on stage is mariachi music and Lola Beltran and like Juan Gabriel and like all that stuff. That's what I love, because that's in my blood. And same thing with my mom. My mom was a folklorico dancer with Linda Ronstadt when she did the Canciones de mi Padre tour in like the late 80s. So she was the one that would open the curtain every night and she performed. I'd like to say, according to like Linda Ronstadt's book that she put out, like her like autobiography she just did, my mom was one of the main reasons she even did that in the first place, because she saw my mom dance and said she wanted to create a tour that would showcase the beautiful dancing of someone like my mom. So
that's awesome.
Those are really big shoes to fill, you know what I mean, in terms of family accomplishments. But it's cool. It creates a really neat dynamic, because I can talk to my dad, and I spoke to him yesterday and tell him, hey, I'm in Providence. I'm heading back to Jersey City. I'm going to be in New York for a couple of days. And he could tell me, oh, cool, like I'm going to be in Chicago in a few weeks. I'm doing this, and I'm going to Albuquerque, then Columbia. And he travels constantly performing and teaching music. And he has a whole thing called the Mariachi Heritage Society, which, fosters that tradition in like younger generations in the Southern California area, and it's spread out all over the country, which is awesome.
That's
so
badass,
they've always been supportive. So whether it was my mom and her sense of rhythm that she instilled in me as a child, she didn't care where I went with it as long as I was making music, And she was the one who was always like, make sure you have a fallback plan. That was her. She was the voice of reason. But my dad bought me my first electric guitar, and he probably thought I'd keep up with playing my first instrument, which was the trumpet. And that definitely didn't happen once I discovered guitar and tab books and got my first like Smashing Pumpkins tab book. But it played out the way it did, and now in my early 30s, I'm trying to learn how to play a lot of this mariachi stuff because it's underappreciated and it's overlooked in terms of its musicality. And I want to be able, if I have kids someday, to be able to teach them those things. I don't want it to end with me just because I didn't follow in those exact footsteps.
Yeah. Would that be something that you'd look into, like, as you're getting older? Like you mentioned, you're starting to learn how to play some of it. Would you at some point be like, you know what, I'm going to make a fucking mariachi album?
I don't know if I would make an album because it has a lot to do with like tradition and respect. And I don't feel like it's my place to just jump in, having not paid my dues in it for 20 years and just like, my blood, sweat, and tears being mariachi. I wouldn't want to just go out there and use my name and my family's name to try to get ahead of like a lot of the kids that have been doing it since they were, 2 or 3 years old. So I can't see myself personally doing that, but I have always let that influence go where it wants to go in the music. It's very subtle, but even as like a guitarist, it's in my strumming and those patterns. And even though I say like I'm learning them now, a lot of those patterns, like I was born with them already in my hands. So
right.
I'll be on the stage and we'll be playing whatever heavy song we're playing, and you'll just notice like the way my right hand is strumming is the same technique that you would see mariachis be doing on stage. And you're not going to hear it through the wall of distortion I have, but there's a different feel as the musician standing there. There's a different feeling in the way that those strings resonate back up into your arm that I don't know how else to describe it, but that it feels like ancient. You know what I mean? It feels like it's old. There's like a connection there. It doesn't just feel like you're digging into a string with a guitar pick. It feels like I'm up here doing the exact same techniques that my grandfather was doing, that my great-great-grandfather and great-great-uncles were doing. So that's there. That being said, like, I would love to jump in there one day and see if I could even cut it on stage with some of these musicians because they're incredible.
Yeah.
And I watch them warming up, and I see children mariachi players that are about like 8, 9 years old strumming some of these songs, and I could never be able to do that. They're like so much further ahead than I could be at this point because it's there and they've fostered it from such a young age. But, my uncle is the greatest mariachi guitar player there is. Like, I could say that without any doubt. My dad, I believe, is the greatest trumpet player that's ever lived in mariachi music. And, again, very large shoes to fill. I wouldn't want to just jump in there and be like, hey, what's up? I'm his son. Like, I'm his nephew. Like, I can, hear a couple power chords, hear a couple riffs. Like, I'd want to do it justice and, like, make them proud and, make, the entire family proud. And they're proud to see me do music in general. My sister makes music. She writes pop songs. She's written songs for Jennifer Lopez that have been on the radio.
Nice.
She's really, really successful with like the Christian pop music market, with her group. It's called Influence. And just me and her on completely different ends of the spectrum musically and what we do and, how we think and all of that. But at the end of the day, my dad, he could put his arms around both of us and be like, I'm proud of both of you guys. Like, this is awesome. He'll come see both of us perform. He might be a bit terrified when he's watching my band perform at these shows, more so than he would be with my sister. But yeah. I can tell that it's appreciated.
That's great, man. And your dad produced too, right? So you can get some of those chops since you produce music as well from him.
Definitely. A lot of my gear starting out, they were all hand-me-downs, and I grew up watching him in the studio telling people when their pitch was off and their timing was off, and that's something that will forever haunt me in the back of my head when I'm working with other musicians, to much their dismay and too much their delight, to say the least. There's some bands I work with that just want to work with me because of that, because I guess I got that gene from him, in which I just tell people, I can say it cut and dry, like, this is off, this is wrong, this is how you fix it. And that's a production technique. The ear itself, the development of your ear as a musician, is as, if not more, an important production technique or production asset as, a brand new computer or some new plugins or a preamp. So yeah. I'm glad more than anything. I learned much more about how to listen to music and how to zoom in on it, and sometimes how to zoom out from it from my dad than I learned about technical things. which, I really appreciate that. And that's something that I really try to use every day in my life, whether it's as a musician or as a producer or what have you.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to name any names, but have you ever had a band that you're producing that were so terrible that you had to tell them something and like kind of cut it? Like, no, this isn't working, man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's not even something that I think producers in general should have to hide, because that's your job. You're being hired on as someone to do that. And it is hard, I'll say, coming from like a punk background or a hardcore background when those are the kind of bands you're working with, because those aren't genres that strive for perfection in terms of musicality. It's all about anyone could do it. Anyone could pick up a guitar and do this. But when you do that, which, God bless that thought, you know what I mean? That anyone could do it, because that's what enables us and really influences us, and it gives us those aspirations to grab a guitar and be on stage. I still want to see people push themselves to be, the best musician they could be. There's nothing wrong with that. Whether it means you plateau at a certain age and you don't go any further, that's still good. I plateaued as a guitar player when I was like 13. I haven't gotten any better 20 years later than when I was a 13-year-old guitarist. Luckily, I developed my own sound, I like to think, by the time I was that age, and I've been able to refine it, but I can't shred to save my life at all.
Right.
But
right.
that the time I would have spent learning how to do all those sweeps and tremolo picking type things, I spent learning how to play the drums. I spent learning proper technique on how to play the bass, on how to identify pitch with singers. So I feel confident in all of those realms. And sometimes you end up with bands or with solo artists even, or even record labels, where you have to just tell them, like, this is really off, and without wasting time, and just let's be rational about this. This is how you could fix it. And it's not always what they want to hear. I've had to tell plenty of bands that this guitar player can't pull that off, so you should have the other one do it, which to them is a big slap in the face sometimes, but that's just the way it works. Like, if people knew how many of their favorite albums weren't performed by the musicians that they think are on them, it would blow their minds.
Yeah.
I have so many producer friends that are just like, oh yeah, I just did that new record. I played all the drums and guitar. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, everyone knows their guitarist. Everyone knows their drummer, but those guys didn't play on the album, or they hired, session dudes to do it. And I don't think that's something to shy away from. It's human, and it's the real world. And as musicians, again, like, every band comes in with a $100,000 reference song on an MP3 from Spotify and says, this is what I want my record to sound like.
Right.
And
right.
I won't even indulge that. I won't sit there and tell them, all right, cool. So, okay, guitars are scooped, vocals are kind of distorted. Let's do that. I'll sit there and be like, okay, like, this was recorded at A&M. This was, this isn't the drummer you thought played on it. That's Shannon Larkin, like the best rock session drummer in LA. This wasn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
this has so many layers of guitars. And I think that people are too afraid to really open their eyes to a lot of that, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's like, it's the entertainment industry. Music is part of the entertainment industry. And the same way it happens with movies, sometimes it happens with music. Someone else has to step in to get it done, and it doesn't take away from the songwriting. It just adds to the performance. And yeah, I've had to do that, and I've had a few nightmare scenarios with bands in the studio where it's just like, there is no saving this. And instead of a producer, I just become a turd polisher. But that's part of the job title. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And hopefully it gets to a point where I'm being a bit more, I could filter out more of the people that reach out to me about doing records. And I started a studio not to make money and not to make a giant name for myself. I started it because there was no other outlets for people that were doing it when they were young, well, when I was around. So I had awful experiences as a 16-year-old trying to get a demo recorded, because everyone was just like this condescending ass behind a desk that was just trying to tell me what I was doing wrong instead of fostering what I was doing right. So I figured if I can make these recordings affordable, and that's what I've always strived to do, and I still strive to do, and I can, be real with them, because no one was honest with me and my friends when we were kids. They didn't tell us, hey, you guys are awful. Your drummer needs drum lessons before you guys start recording more songs. Like, that would have come in really handy for me as a kid. You know what I mean? If someone told me, don't buy that guitar amp, like, don't even dare put, 9-gauge strings on your guitar when you're down tuning. No one told me that stuff. So I want to be that guy that can break it down easy and be like, hey, the way that drum kit looks when you look at it online on the catalog, like, don't set it up like that in real life, because it's real stupid and impractical. I want to be able to, like, show that to people and just be real with them, because they deserve that. Anybody trying to do something original and make art deserves the honest, I don't want to say criticism, but that honest helping hand when they ask for it.
Right. But even criticism, like it's got a negative connotation to it, but that word, that is what it, you need that. People need that in life. You don't look at it negatively. Don't let it affect your ego and your self-esteem. Like just take constructive criticism. You know what I mean? Like it's weird. It's a weird thing. And like you mentioned, there's nobody telling you these things when you're growing up. Like when we were doing music back in Miami, it was kind of independent. We didn't really have a producer. We were forced to kind of do it ourselves. Like, hey, what do we need to buy to record this? Because there was no producers in Miami except for our, couple other friends that were in bands trying to do it too.
Exactly. And yeah, I agree with that, especially as far as criticism goes. Like you should be able to take that well into adulthood. And we played a show the other day, and a good friend of mine, Jay Moss, who he used to be in a band called Defeater, and he has a really successful studio called Getaway. And he's done a lot of incredible records, and I see him as a mentor when it comes to recording big time. He answers all my technical questions and all the stuff that I'm not savvy in. And he came to see us, and without even, I didn't even ask him. We were having a couple drinks after the show, and he's just like, cool, let me tell you what I thought. And I'm like, okay. This is what I've been waiting for years in this band, was another producer to come watch us play and tell me where the weaknesses were in our live show. And he was honest, and luckily there wasn't much. He's just like, tones are great, this is great, this is great. And he just told me straight out, he's like, when you're going into the lower register on your vocals, it's kind of shaky. And that's something I'm very self-aware of and something I try to rectify while I'm on stage every night. But of course, I have my excuses where I'm like, well, I haven't had a day off in like 13 days on this tour, so my voice is kind of just shot to begin with. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate hearing that, because then I could go forward and adjust. And instead of like getting lazy with some melodies and letting them drop, I could keep them higher. And it's more of a technical adjustment, I'd like to say. Mm-hmm. And to some people, that takes away from the fun of it. But I have fun treating music like it's a video game. You know what I mean? Like when I'm singing, I want to sing as best as I can. When I'm playing a guitar part, I want to play it as best as I can. And that doesn't mean I want to like take the energy away or take away the interaction. But like, I'll be honest, like I make music for myself. Like I've never sought out to make music for other people. Mm-hmm. So if I'm having fun doing it and I'm, doing myself a service in that sense, then I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And I would like to think that people will resonate with that.
Yeah, man. And it's, I wish people would be more accepting of criticism. And then I also wish that people had more, I guess, the guts or the balls to tell someone in a nice way, obviously, that, some of the things. Because I remember, people coming up to me like, oh, this song, you should probably do this. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? Like,
yeah,
I wrote that. Go fuck yourself, But
yeah.
But also thinking back, I'm like, man, maybe I should have, maybe I should have been a little more open to hearing that. Mm-hmm. And I think more people should be open to hearing that, because everybody gets on the defensive these days. And I think that's one of the biggest problems in society right now. Like everybody's either too afraid to tell somebody something, or they're too reactionary to when they hear something, instead of being like, maybe I do need to, make a correction in life. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
And that comes from, I believe, an inflated ego. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when you grow up, you hear those stories about like how Nirvana, like, well, the label didn't want to release this, but we did it anyway, or Guns N' Roses, or like, all those like larger than life rock bands. They all have that famous story about how 9 Inch Nails, like they didn't want to release the EP, so we had to record it in secret. They released Broken like in secret, or you know what I mean? And those stories are incredible and they're inspiring. And at the same time, all these bands around, like all these younger bands, like they're not Nirvana, they're not 9 Inch Nails, we're not those bands. So it's not like we don't have a multi-million-dollar company telling us you can't do this, and then we're like, no, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway. Like if we have some close friends that know us and know what we're capable of, and like know what we're going for, and they give us criticism, like it's fine to accept that criticism. We don't have to act like we're fighting the man just because our uncle that used to be in a band told me that, oh, maybe you shouldn't, play with your fingers when you're playing bass in a rock band. Like, just take the criticism and move forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I wanted to share a story with you, because now that you brought it up, I don't know if I have shared it on the podcast before, but we my band recorded with Jeremy Stotska out in Deerfield Beach, and he used to be a sound guy for Marilyn Manson, and he apparently he told us a story when we were there that he went to the studio when Trent was recording the Downward Spiral. And he went in, and apparently he was like, I went in, and then, there was no sound at all, and you walk down this hallway, and it's just gear stacked everywhere. And when we got to the end of the hall, you opened the door, it was this dark room, and the music was just blasting as loud as possible. And Trent was in this room, just like in front of the speakers, listening back to the Downward Spiral as loud as humanly possible, naked.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, what kind of next level shit is that? Because you listen to the Downward Spiral, and there's so many layers. I always considered him to be like an alien. Like, there's no way that a normal human being wrote that album. And just hearing that story of him like being there naked, I'm like, man, what an experience that must have been for him, like for Trent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
at the same time, like, I would love if I was ever in that kind of situation where it's just like I had a name for myself and all that, and I heard someone was going to come by the studio, I would probably try to stage something like that just so they could go forward with a story. You know what I mean? Like, I would do my damnedest to just be like the weirdest human being I could. The one thing that I always thought was really cool about, like, when, Trent Reznor, for example, when he was doing that stuff, is how much they focused on just playing like video games and watching movies while they were making the records. Yeah. And you can find footage of them. You can find footage of them just like watching porn and stuff while they were making the Downward Spiral, and then sampling sounds from it, manipulating it. And some of it ended up on like B-sides and rarities and all that. But just, you know what I mean? Like, the inspiration doesn't have to just come from music itself.
Yeah. And
you could hear it in a lot of like samples off that record, how mechanical it is. And I tried to carry that into our record. There's a lot of unconventional sounds in Death in the Moon where I was manipulating like thunder strikes and building full drum beats out of thunder. And, the sound of like a swarm of bees or like pipes clanking. And, I guess that's not a big surprise if you come from the side of like the industrial music and where it evolved from. But when you're coming from just being a rock band and feeling confined to just guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, it feels insane. You know what I mean? Like, the first time I picked out a bunch of samples of like wild animals and thunder crashes and waves crashing and all that stuff. And like, if I was breathing into a microphone, then trying to manipulate the sound of my breaths rather than just picking up a guitar and like heading to drop D and just seeing what I could come up with. Yeah. It just felt like a whole new world. And I like to think bands like Nine Inch Nails and Garbage and the Smashing Pumpkins opened those doors for that type of experimentation. But more than people really realize, bands like the Beatles did that as well. And like, making famous records that we all revere and hold in such high regard, making them on 4 tracks was a feat in itself. And the fact that they were able to do all that crazy stuff with mellotrons and sitars and all that and get it down to 4 tracks on analog tape through bouncing or whatever methods they use is crazy innovative. And for the most part, I feel like music has lost a lot of that. Maybe we just don't see it as much. I'd like to think it's still happening somewhere in a basement, but I'd like to see more of that. And more than anything, as a music fan, I'd like to hear more about it. I was always one to read the credits of albums and read all the Guitar Magazine articles about how these sounds were made and how this was created. Like, I want that to be in vogue again because I miss that. I don't like just hearing about a new single being shoveled with the artwork down my throat and then you hear it and that's it. I want to know like what made that song, whether it's on the technical side of things or from a place of where was their mind where they wrote that.
Experimentation, yeah.
Exactly. Like, I want to know about that. And I feel like this next generation of musicians, it's lacking in that because we don't have that anymore. You don't have those magazines. Even the ones that were like cheesy, like Circus Magazine and those like teeny bop or gothy magazines we had when we were kids when Hot Topic was actually scary to walk into. Like stuff doesn't exist anymore. So I feel like that's why it's so cut and dry with just here's a beat, here's the vocal, it's on SoundCloud, check it out.
Right.
And it's missing that depth. And thank God vinyl is still a thing that you can physically hold. But if that vinyl doesn't have the detail in the liner notes, you know what I mean? I want to read names that are unfamiliar. I want to see who mixed things, who collaborated, who did the remixes, all of that, because it's important. Like, there's movie credits for a reason, and sometimes you sit there because there's something important that comes after those credits. Like, why wouldn't you do that with the music? Like, you might discover something cool in those credits as well.
Yeah, and the gone are the days of like hidden tracks too. Like Nine Inch Nails is famous for that, and I used to love that. I used to love like, hey, why is there still 90 tracks on the CD? And then you skip to the back and like, oh shit, look at that, a whole other song. Like,
Yeah, and you come to expect it. AFI did it for like 3 albums, and I remember being in high school when I was a huge AFI fan and being like, holy crap, this is insane. And it made you feel this superiority complex to be like, oh yeah, Midnight, it was called Midnight Sunrise or something. Like, oh yeah, my favorite AFI song, you probably wouldn't know it. It's like a secret song. For me, that was cool. The singles I loved growing up, and especially I go back to the Smashing Pumpkins, the Airplane Flies High box set that everyone always saw on Tower Records for $50. That thing had 5 singles from Melancholy, and each one of those singles had like 6 songs on it. It was like 6 EPs that you could buy for $50. And some of those B-sides are better than their hits that were ever on the radio. And that was exciting for me. I've been working on remixes for the album as well, and I really want to try to finish some songs that didn't make it to the album, but it's a matter of how can I release those in this day and age? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to stir up excitement being like, hey, we have like a Japan-only single B-side coming out. Like, no one's going to care about that. And I'd like to think there's a way around it rather than just like, okay, we put up 3 new songs on Spotify. They didn't make the record. You know, have at it. I just wish that excitement was still there for like, I don't want to say hidden music, but for music that was harder to obtain, that you had to like seek out to get.
Yeah, it's a lot harder these days, man. Like, I'll give you an example. Recently, the Record Store Day has also, like, Mastodon did a cover of Stairway to Heaven, and partially it's due to, like, myself staying away from the internet and all of that, but I didn't hear that until I bought the record on Record Store Day, brought it home, and put it on. Like, I think that's kind of where we need to go. It's like, as a, like, release it, and then the fan themselves, it's on them to kind of like, hey, I'm not going to hear it online. I'm not going to look for it. I'm just going to wait until it comes out. I buy it and I put it on.
Exactly.
That was the only way. But I do appreciate that, what you're saying. Like, we are missing that element, you know, that element of surprise.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks, and it is a bit disheartening because you know, a band like Mastodon could do that, and they're an established band, and they're going to have fans that go out and buy that and put it on YouTube. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And or get those songs out there. Whereas a band that's smaller, like a band like us, like I have some of these remixes that I'm sitting on from our new album that personally, like, I like the remixes more than the final album version of these tracks, just because it was just different for me. I'm not going to say it's like better or not, but it was a different experience in making it. Whereas, you know, on the album, it was a bit more of a conventional process. But doing the remixes just reshaped it for me, and it's something that's new to me as well, so it's still new and exciting. But I'm like, okay, I need to release this as on a flash drive that I leave somewhere in New York City on a subway, and then someone will, you know, in my head, someone's gonna find it and upload it, and it's gonna just take off and be this next big thing. Whereas in reality, like, I'm gonna leave it on a flash drive somewhere, and someone's gonna format it, and then it's where their term paper is gonna live. But yeah. So I need to be realistic about like where this stuff goes, and it's music, and I want people to hear it. So again, there's like the necessity of it all, and like things just don't work the way they used to, and that the music was harder to obtain when we were younger, and now it's, I don't want to say oversaturated, but it's heavily saturated, and that there's music everywhere you go, and with streaming services and all that, it's kind of harder to do something special. And I'm glad Record Store Days is still a thing, and I'm not much of a vinyl collector, but sometimes I hear about things coming out and I freak out. And when Cursive did the Burst in Bloom on vinyl a few years ago, like, that was one of the records I was like, oh crap, like, I need to actually care about this and go buy that because it was cool. It was exclusive, and it's, you know, I'd like to see more of that.
For sure. And also, like, going a little bit further back to what you were saying about experimenting with sound, one of the things that I notice is missing, and this links to my next question, video games. Like, when I was growing up, one of the things, and I know this probably sounds cheesy as fuck, but one of the things that inspired me to work on music more was MTV Music Generator. It was a video game where you could sit there and play around with sound effects and like tweak it. And I was making music with like whale sounds and like whatever random sound. It was just fun to experiment with that. And we don't really have anything like that. Like, there was a little bit of a burst with like Rock Band and Guitar Hero and stuff like that, but that was different. That's more like cover song shit. The idea of making a game or something interactive for experimenting with music, that's not around.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, hopefully there's so many apps. I mean, I'm sure people say otherwise. Be like, well, no, there's an app for this, and this. And it's like, but there's not that organic connection with it. There's not, you know, when we were kids, we all had the crappy Casio or Radio Shack keyboard, and that's what you used to, like, experiment with sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And with me, it was a karaoke machine. I would record a guitar part into the microphone input on one side, move the cassette to the second side, and then record my next guitar part, and I learned how to multi-track record that way. And now it's just like you can get drum machines on your iPhone. You can get, you know, any kind of MPC MIDI pad on your iPad and assign sounds to it. So it's there. It is available, but it's a bit daunting, and it's not the same. It's not as organic as just digging into your closet or finding your older brother's keyboard somewhere and just making it work. You know what I mean? So it'd be cool to see a return to form with that kind of stuff. And there's some companies trying. Teenage Engineering is doing some cool stuff with their little like pocket, like drum machine type things. And again, the world of electronic music is something that I'm new to as well. So I've been having a ton of fun just with like analog drum machines. And like, I bought my first sequencer a couple years ago and ended up using that on nearly every song on our new record. And I felt like a kid again. I felt, you know, when you used to buy those electronic kits where, you know, conduct electricity through a potato or whatever,
yeah.
Like it felt like that. Like there was a hands-on excitement to it. And I feel like that's something that's really drawn me to that world of electronic music more than anything, is just being able to be hands-on with it again in this day and age where I feel a bit disconnected from just playing a guitar. Because, like I said, I feel like I plateaued with it. I feel like I'm not getting anything new out of it. So being able to combine that with something new has been really refreshing, and it's been very inspiring.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And, you know, we're getting close to an hour here, so I want to wrap it up. I have 3 questions. The first one links to the what I said previously, and it's video games. So you've mentioned video games now a couple times. Do you play?
I have never been a video game person aside from Oregon Trail, and but I am a fan of that. But no, I've never played video games at home. I've never had like a video game system or anything. I don't know much about them.
Okay.
I have my go-tos. If I'm at a barcade or something, it's always Marvel versus Capcom, and I'm just slaying everyone with it.
Nice.
Honestly, that's where I draw the line with it, though. I've just never Super Mario World. I have that on my Game Boy still that I take on tour, and I could still, you know, kick ass on that one. But in terms of all the other ones, like, man, they're intimidating. When I look at people playing some of those games, it's like I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, and it's a big time sink too for a lot of people, like especially if you're on tour and, you know, you're producing albums, you don't really have a whole lot of time. And some of these new games, you know, it's like 60, 80 hours of you know, your time that you got to dedicate.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And
I spend that time on Netflix or on my computer with Ableton open making crazy thunder sounds. So I'm glad it's to me, like video games and like drinking soda are 2 things that I'm glad that my mom kind of kept away from me as a kid.
Nice.
And, yeah, I'm still thankful for that. But when they are around, I'll have fun with both.
Nice. Another question was beer. Are you a drinker at all?
I do drink. I don't drink a lot of beer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
When I started late, I started drinking when I was 26, 27.
Okay.
And just our former guitar player, Jeremiah Bignell, he was always an incredible brewer and just had such a knack for that he's the one that really got us in the band into beer and the nuances of it. So going to Europe with him and trying cask ales for the first time, and he was really big on fermented things and just a lot of sours.
Mm-hmm.
So I got really into all that stuff, and he has a brewery now called Homage.
Right, yeah, up in next to the Glass House.
Yep, that's Jared. That's our old guitar player. He's like the head brewer for Homage.
Hell yeah.
And that's why when you go in there, you'll see beers named after Dillinger Escape Plan songs, after Starflyer 59 songs, Pumpkin songs. That's all him. And it's really cool to see what he does with it. But, I mean, some of the coolest beers I ever had were with him, like Cascade in Portland. I love that stuff, those sours.
Nice. Yeah, they make some of the most sour beer I've ever had. Like, it's just mind-blowing.
Oh, it's so good. They had the one that's done in the wine barrels, and I can't remember what it was called. It was like a cherry, like a cherry sour in wine barrels, and I love that thing. But yeah, the other guys in the band are nerdy about that stuff. Our bass player Mike is really big into like the IPAs and knows everything about them, and that's just I don't know why, it just didn't click with me. But I do drink. I really enjoy weird stuff. I love chartreuse. I love absinthe.
Nice.
I love mezcal.
Well, that just goes back to your roots, the mezcal.
yeah. That's already in there.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, Dan. That's cool. And then finally, I needed to ask you, because you grew up here, you were born in LA, and you're Mexican. Where are the best and most authentic tacos that you can get in LA?
So the hard part about that is that I'm, even though I grew up in LA and I'm Mexican, and this might kind of like counter some of those things, I've also been vegan for a very long time.
Oh, God. So, okay.
Yeah, but I still, I'm a human being, and it's still in my blood, and I know flavor, and like any vegan, I am obsessed with food. There's a lot of really cool companies coming out, not companies, like pop-ups and just little like mom and pop type things popping up all over LA now doing vegan Mexican food. And it's awesome because you see where they come from, and there's a big stigma attached to vegan anything, that it's just some hipster stuff and it's a flavor of the week, and it's just, I really don't want like a cauliflower kale taco or whatever, but that's not the case. And there's this amazing one called Vegetino's that I'm obsessed with, and they're in Highland Park every Thursday night, right in front of Donut Friend, which is Mark Trombino's donut shop.
Nice.
And it's a pop-up right there, and their al pastor tacos and burritos are like to die for. And Alex, the guy behind it, he's from Mexico, and the recipes are so incredibly authentic. Their birria that I've had is incredible. Their pozole is incredible. Their flan, everything. And they're not coming from a place where they're just like, all right, we're gonna try to make this turn this whatever random vegetable into this meat. They're coming from a place where we're in this for moral reasons, our own personal reasons, and we want to give people the flavors that they grew up on that they miss. So I 100% pick Vegetino's for the best tacos, burritos in LA, but the al pastor is number one. That's like, you got to go there and try that. And there's a few other ones. My friends will pop up. Alchemy Organica is awesome. Masa Taco in Whittier, that's a new one. Again, they're popping up all over the place. And my dad actually has a Mexican restaurant in LA called Cielito Lindo in South El Monte, where his mariachi performs.
Really?
And
wow.
It's just like, that's like my life's goal, is to get him to introduce some sort of vegan menu and just like let me take the reins on it and be like, we're few and far between, but there are people like me that are, Mexican American vegans, and like, I just want to kick back, listen to some Vicente Fernandez songs being played by a great mariachi on stage, drink a piña colada, and like eat some kind of vegan fajitas or tacos or something. Like, we can make this happen. It's 2019. There's no reason it shouldn't be there already. So I am optimistic, but then again, I go on tour for 2 months on end, and I won't dare touch any Mexican food outside of LA. So
nice, yeah. I need to check that out, man. I gotta go check out Vegetino's, and it's Mi Cielito Lindo sounds appealing as well. I'm just,
it's awesome.
I'm not vegan, but I used to be at one point, and I just eat whatever. Like, some friends of mine are like, oh, you're going to that vegan place. Like, yeah, it's delicious. I'm sorry. I like delicious food, whether it's vegan or not,
Yeah, so food is food. It is what it is. And, it doesn't go both ways, because vegans won't say food is food about other stuff. But at the same time, it's like, it's for everybody. Like, everyone could try vegan food. There's literally nothing negative about it. Aside from, I will be real and say that there's some like cultural like repercussions, or you know what I mean, in terms of, you get into a whole conversation about gentrification and like what it does to some communities, but like there's people, like I said, like Vegetinos, that are handling it in such a cool way. And I actually started an Instagram page. I haven't kept up with it much, but I need to jump back on it. I started one about 2 years ago called Sin Carne, and it's just a page that I wanted to dedicate to showcasing vegan options and things that could be, accidentally vegan at local mom and pop restaurants. So not everything had to be a chain, or you know what I mean? Like that's one thing that could really help a lot of these like Hispanic, Latino communities from outside investors coming in and like taking over the mom and pop laundromat and introducing a place called like the Urban Taco. Is if our people that are there already could just, all they need is someone to step in and be like, hey, this is big right now. This is what people are going to want to come in and do. Like, let's modernize. Like, let's help you bring some new options in. It's going to triple your business, and like, let's do it. So that was the whole point of that. And it's a venture that I really care about, and I hope I could devote more time to in the future, because it's all about like giving back and helping people. And I personally don't feel like I'm doing that with music, or, sometimes I feel like I'm doing it with recording. But for me, again, like music has always been a selfish thing that I'm making for myself. So I want there to be at least one big thing in my life where I feel like I'm giving back and I'm doing something to actively help in causes I care about, albeit like a displacement in communities or veganism. So that's something that I think combines both of those. And I hope that could go further as well. And again, Vegetinos, al pastor burrito. You gotta try it.
I'll definitely try it, man. I'll definitely try it. And so just to wrap up here, new album, Death and the Moon, May 3rd on Evil Inc. Records. Make sure to pick it up. I already heard the single you guys put out, and like I said, it reminded me a lot of Stabbing Westward. I loved it. It's what triggered me to be like, you know what? Let me reach out to Mark. Like, hey, I want to talk to Alex. Let's make something happen.
Awesome. Thank you.
And you guys are on tour with Combi Christ. I know that you guys are playing here May 10th, I think.
Yes, we are, the Regent.
Yeah, I'm trying to get out there. I know I was talking to Debbie because she's trying to set up a podcast with the guys from Combi Christ. So I might be there.
Cool.
Whether or not it's podcasting or not, I might still just be there just to catch the show. So see the tour dates online. What's your social medias for everyone?
The website's yearofthesnakes.com, and the Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff is silver_snakes. Facebook is facebook.com/yearofthesnakes.
Nice. Yeah, and go to yearofthesnakes.com. Pre-order the vinyl. I saw it. It has that cool like smoky effect. It's like white with like a black smoke swirl. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
Pick that up. And dude, thank you very much for taking some time to talk to me today.
Of course.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll catch you in LA and we can reconnect there.
Awesome.
All right, brother. Take care. Thanks again.
Okay. You too.
Cheers.